everybody, welcome back to another fun and exciting Algebra 1 class. Today we are going to be in chapter number 4, lesson 8. Chapter 4, 8, and this is on page 149. This is where we'll be beginning. We're going to be talking today about linear inequalities with two variables. So over the last really 7 lessons, we've been talking about linear inequalities with one variable, just the x. And so we've been graphing that on the number line. We've been drawing our number line, putting the critical points, and then finding the interval from there. Well, the only difference to this is that now we are going to be graphing in 2 dimensions or on the Cartesian plane, an x and a y. So it's going to be a lot like last chapter where we learned how to graph. Now we're going to be graphing. The only change is now we're going to be graphing inequalities instead of equalities. So let's take a look at what that means. Well, first of all, instead of having an equal sign, and we're right there on page 149, we are going to have a greater than sign or a less than sign. Now, we could have greater than or equal to, or we could have less than or equal to, but we will not have just an equal sign. It will have a greater than or less than sign with it. And really, that's the only difference here from what we graphed in the past. We'll have to make one little change on our graph, but I'll show you that in just a little bit. All right, if you will, look at page 150, page 150. Graphing a linear inequality in 2 variables. They give you 3 little steps there. Pretty easy steps. First of all, just graph it. Well, the problem there is you actually have to solve it. So you got to solve it to graph it. Second is test one point from each side of the line. We've already been doing that. We've been testing points. And then third, you are going to shade half of the plane that corresponds with the correct solution set, whichever you find. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So if you look down here, I have 2x minus y is greater than 3. Now this looks a little different right off the bat because look, now we have an x and we have a y. Okay, so that's new. We haven't been doing that. Well, we did it in chapter 3, but we haven't been doing it yet in chapter 4 with this little guy right here, this inequality. Well, you would graph it the same way that you would graph a equality. There's multiple ways to graph. I showed you one way is to do a t with this being the x and this being the y, and just putting random numbers in here and then solve it with that, and then it would kick out an output over here, would give you the y. And then I showed you how to put it into slope-intercept form. To be honest with you, any of those ways would work. What I'm going to show you right now is graphing by intercept. Graphing by intercept. So the way that we graph by intercept is kind of the x and y idea. The 0 for the x and then the 0 for the y. Remember, you have to do one of each, and that will give you your intercept. So let's go ahead and plug this 0 in first for the x. So we'll say 2 times 0 minus y less than or greater than 3. Well, that's going to cancel. 2 times 0 is 0. We're going to get minus y is greater than 3. We're going to divide everything by a -1 to get rid of that negative sign. Don't forget when you do that, we do have to flip the sign. That doesn't really matter too much right here, but that gives us a -3. Y is less than -3. So here, that would be a -3. That's the important part. The sign right now is not super important. All right, so now we're just going to do the same thing. We'll come back here. I'll erase all this. And then we're going to, instead of the y, we're going to substitute in for with the 0. So 2x minus 0 greater than 3. Well, that just kind of cancels. Minus 0 doesn't mean anything. It means, you know, same thing as plus 0. You're not really adding anything. You're not subtracting anything. So we're going to divide both sides by 2, and we're going to get x is greater than 3 over 2. Well, that's kind of hard to graph. So what's better to graph? Well, if you divide that, 2 goes into 3 1.5 times. So that would probably be easier to write 1.5 right there. And you'll see why in just a second. Now, let's come down here and we're going to graph this. I'll change my paper over here to a ruled paper. Might be able to see this just a little bit better with the graph paper. All right, so remembering, going back to my x and y, I had a 0, -3. So that was my first point. So we're going to go 0 on the x, -3 on the y. So 1, 2, 3. We're going to go right here. Okay, so there's our first point. Then we come back up here. 1.50. 1.50. So what's 1.5? Well, 1.5. So we're going to go 1.5 on the x. So in other words, it's kind of like 1.5. We're going to be in the middle of this one. And then we're going 0 on the y. So in reality, our point is right here. Okay, and now all we have to do is go ahead and join those 2 points. Let me try to get that a little bit better. All right, that's real close. And now is the point at which the question comes in of this right here. This sign that we had right here starts to become important. Sorry about that. This greater than or less than sign. Okay. This is how you have to test these points. Well, first of all, let's talk about our line. Because our sign is, remember with the opened and closed where we had the dots, this would be an open dot and this would be a closed dot where we color it in. Okay. We've got the same thing going on this graph. When it is not equal to, so for instance this, it's greater than, what we're going to do is we're going to come down here to our graph and we're not going to use a solid line. We are going to use a dotted line. Okay. The reason why we're going to use a dotted line right there is because that will tell everybody that it is not equal to. Because remember, we're doing inequalities. So this is 2x minus y is greater than 3, not equal to 3. So our line can't show that it's equal. Our line needs to show that it's not equal to. And the way that we do that in graphing is we use a dotted line to show that. What if it was equal to? What if we go back here and it did have an equal to? Then we would use an actual straight line. We would use the not dotted or regular line would go there. But in this case, it is not equal to. It's just greater than. So we're going to use the dotted line. Now, and I'll come back up here to do this, and then I'll show it to you down there. So let me erase some of this stuff. What I want to do now is I want to go back down here, and I want to choose a point. And I'm going to tell you the point that I always choose, okay? And it's easier for me. So if something's easier for you, that's fine. But what you have to do is you have to pick a point that's either on this side of the line or a point that's on this side of the line. You're just choosing one of the sides of the line. It doesn't matter which side that you choose. You're testing the point to see if that works. Now, I'm telling you right now that this point right here, 0, 0, okay, that is the easiest point to test because basically it's going to zero out everything in your equation and it's going to be really easy to do the math on it. So I would pick this point right here. It's on the left side of the line. Doesn't matter which side it's on, but just test the point. All right, so what does that mean, test the point? Well, let's go back up here, and let's just put in 0, 0. What does that mean? 0, 0. Or in other words, 0 for the x and 0 for the y. That's what we want to put in. So 2 times 0 minus 0 is greater than 3. All right. Well, what is 2 times 0? 0 minus 0 is greater than 3. Is 0 greater than 3? No, it's not. So what does that tell us? Here's what it tells us. It tells us that this side of the line, the one with the point, the 0, 0, is not a solution. That side did not work. So what side does work is this side. And now what we want to do, just like we would draw a line on our graph, we want to color in that side of the graph, okay? Because that tells us that everything over here works. If you want to test that, then go ahead and test it. So let's pick this point right here, okay, because it's on the right side of the line. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4, 0 would be that point right there. So let's go make sure that 4, 0 works. So now here we're going to redo this and we're going to put in 4, 0. So we're testing 4, 0. We just want to see. Now I'm telling you it's going to work, but we want to verify that just so that we can make sure. 2 times 4 minus 0 is greater than 3. 2 times 4 is 8 minus 0. 8 is greater than 3. Is that true? Yes, it is true. So we can check mark that, and we can come down here, and now we know that this is indeed the side that is bigger, and so we would color in that whole side over there. All right. You do the same thing with the inequality if it has a greater than or equal to. The only difference is that if it has an or equal to is that this line would be a solid line. Okay, that's the only change. Other than that, you would do it the exact same way, put your points on there, and then draw your line. Remember, there's 3 different ways that I taught you to graph. You can graph by just random x and y points. You can graph by slope-intercept form, or you can graph by x and y intercept. That's the way that I did it. You can choose to graph however you want to, but graph it. Make sure you draw your line dotted or straight, depending on if it's equal to or not, and then test a point, figure out which one works, color in the side, then you're done. All right, hope you learned something today. There's some practice problems there in your book. You can go ahead and take a look at those. If you have any questions, you can always put that there in the comments, and I'll try to get to you, okay? All right, we'll see you later. You have a good day. Bye-bye.